the youngins. That's technically
Yeah.
hooked in. Okay, chat everyone.
I'm going to start the webinar. Welcome, everyone. I'm just going to give it about a minute for folks to come into the virtual and physical rooms. Good to see everyone.
Everyone in this room could make sure that their mics are muted, that your volume is off.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Government Transition Advisory Committee. Today is Tuesday, October 17th, and we will be here from 6 to 8 p.m. Committee members and community members listening in, welcome to the 12th regular meeting of the Government Transition Advisory Committee. My name is Julia Meyer. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Engagement and Community Participation Manager for the transition. Our co-chair, Jose, is going to facilitate tonight's meeting. Leah, unfortunately, is out sick today. Next slide, please. Before we get started, I'm just going to take a minute to go over some Zoom logistics. This is a hybrid meeting. The meeting is being recorded for later viewing, and it's being live streamed on our YouTube channel. A copy of the recording will be posted on the city's transition webpage under Meetings and Events. For tonight's meeting, we have closed captioning, American Sign Language, and Spanish language interpretation available tonight. To access Spanish, I'm afraid to start talking again. Sorry, I was getting some feedback. To access Spanish interpretation, please click on the globe icon at the bottom of your screen and select Spanish. To access closed captioning, click on the CC button on the bottom of the screen. Committee members, please take this moment to change your chat settings to everyone so that folks listening in can follow along with the chat. Please remember that the meeting chat is part of the public meeting record. For community members listening in, we have the Zoom Q&A feature enabled tonight. You can submit questions or comments through the Q&A function. We may not answer all of the questions live in today's meeting, but we read them and they do become part of our public record. At today's meeting, we have time held for verbal public comment, but as a reminder, you can submit written public comment at any time through our comment form online by calling 311 or by emailing transition@portlandoregon.gov. And with that, I will pass it to Jose to review tonight's agenda.
Thank you. So we will spend the first 10 minutes on committee business, followed by public comment. Then we'll have time for committee engagement updates and the overall monthly transition update. Then we'll spend a significant portion of tonight's meeting collecting your input on the draft work plan. We will learn about the city administrator recruitment approach and the plan for what happens before the city administrator is recruited. Before we adjourn our meeting today, we will close with a brief review of our next steps. Next slide, please. Leah, Joe, and Destiny are unable to attend tonight's meeting, and David will be arriving late. We need to approve the September 20th and October 3rd meeting summaries. Is there a motion to approve the September 20th meeting?
Oh, I wasn't there, so I can't.
It was sent out.
Second.
With spelling corrected.
It's been moved and seconded. Any objections? Seeing none, passes. Motion to approve the October 3rd meeting summary.
There's one thing I noticed that we had the conversation early, I think during our public comment period, about ensuring that it was the beginning of the meetings or early in the meetings. And I don't think that was in that summary. So I'd like it to be, if possible.
What was the?
I'm sorry. Can folks just remember to please raise your Zoom hand?
Sorry.
It's a hybrid meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Everyone cut that, what Zach said?
No.
Well, Zach meant,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. Zach Curl, he, him. And I raised at our last meeting during our public comment period of just making sure that we had a consistent early in the agenda timeframe for public comment so that people who were asking to come in for public comment know when they might be
Very good.
presenting.
Thank you.
Bill?
Thank you, Jose. Some of us are aware, Mani Grewal, if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, informed us that she has an ill daughter, so she may be late or may not be able to join. So just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you. Yes, we're aware. I think the last I heard, she was trying to make it, but she had a meeting right before this, so she might be a little late. Are there any other changes to the October 3rd meeting summary? Okay, so can we move to approve them with Zach's addition? Someone,
I would move to approve.
okay, second?
Second.
Second. Any objections? Seeing none, it passes. Next slide, please. Our final order of committee business is to review the working agreements. As usual, they state as follows. In discussions, challenge ideas rather than individuals, offer constructive suggestions, approach different opinions with curiosity, seek to understand, keep the needs and concerns of the local community and the larger region at the forefront of the work, arrive on time and be prepared to the best of your ability. Let the group know if you're unable to attend a meeting. The co-chairs will aim to incorporate tools for breathers, keep multitasking to a minimum, keep focus on the objectives of the meetings, utilize co-chairs to know additional topics for discussion by submitting topics in writing via email. Next slide, please. Honor the decisions of the group, contribute to the overall success of the group by finding ways to participate that best meets your needs. Step up and step back, collectively work to ensure that every member who wants to be heard is heard. Just a reminder, we'll be keeping time so we don't go too far over. Embrace conflict and work with your fellow committee members and staff to find ways to give each other feedback. The co-chairs will aim to incorporate various feedback tools and use I statements. I'll now pass it to Julia to introduce public comment.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So we have time held on tonight's agenda for verbal public comment. As always, community members are asked to sign up ahead of time. We had 2 folks sign up. We probably technically have time for 3 people to give public comment. So if you're in the audience and think you want to have something to share, I'll ask for volunteers after our 2 signups have already testified. You each have 3 minutes to provide testimony. The 2 folks who signed up, I do see in the attendee list, are Babs and Vicky. So Babs, I am going to promote you to a panelist. You just accept that invitation. You can come into the room. Okay, Babs, if you want, you can be on camera. If not, that's okay. And start whenever you want, and I'll keep track of your time. Welcome.
Thank you so much. But I don't have a comment yet. So is that okay? I want to wait till the meeting moves on a little bit and then may comment later. Is that okay?
Babs, actually, this is the time we have held on our agenda for public comment. So if you don't want to give it now, I would encourage you to give it in writing or by calling 311 or testifying verbally at our next full committee meeting.
Okay, well then I will say something of primary importance to me as we move forward. And I've been following this whole process the last 2 years. And I always introduce myself as a 75-year-old lifelong Portland resident. Definitely following all the work that you all are doing and all the transition and districting committees. An extremely important issue for me is environmental justice and climate change. So I'm just putting that out there. I have reviewed the current organizational structure presented by Michael Jordan. And as of right now, there isn't a specific climate officer. And that is a primary importance to me, that be included in that organizational chart. Again, this might not be the right forum, but I actually wasn't sure what all I was going to say, but I don't want to lose the opportunity to put that forward, that environmental justice and climate change is a top priority for me. Thank you so much for all the hard work, all you have done. I've zoomed into many of your meetings over this last year. So thank you, folks. Okay,
Thanks, Babs. It's good to hear from you again.
thank you.
Okay, Vicky, I am going to promote you to a panelist. If you see the invite, just go ahead and accept it and you'll come into the virtual room. Hi, Vicky. So same, keep your camera on or off as you want. You have 3 minutes and start whenever you want. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. My name is Vicky Payne, and I am an employee of Multnomah County, but the views I'm expressing today are my own. Last week's meeting, or I guess 2 weeks ago, there was talk about there was a budget to hire coalition groups. And first, I wanted to know how the city is going to abstain from giving money to groups that are affiliated with candidates. Many of these orgs endorse candidates, or at least do so with their partner arm org, like Coalition of Communities of Color that did the original charter surveys, for instance. I know taxpayers were pretty offended when they found out the org that the city paid to do outreach turned around and spent even more money than that to push a specific vote yes campaign on something that they were supposed to be neutral on their other arm. It kind of smelled of impropriety, and I'd advise the city to be more cautious this time around. And then the city is spending around $675K on hard to reach voter education for underserved communities, but only about $250K on general population voter outreach. There was mentioned, do you guys have the county budget numbers for this outreach yet that was mentioned in the last meeting? And I ask this because nobody really understands this new method of voting. It's not just ranked choice. It's therefore new to all people that live in Portland, and outreach should really be equal across the entire Tri-County area, because Portland voters are in all 3 counties. Do Washington and Clackamas counties have any type of budget to educate Portland voters about the city might not necessarily reach? And I don't understand why the Office of Civic Life of the city can't just take this effort on and maybe hire a few more people, or at least oversee it. They have access and connections to all the neighborhood associations, business associations, cultural and community organizations already. Hiring outside firms doesn't ensure all of these groups are reached unless we specifically tell them who to reach. So I don't know if that's part of the plan. And specific example is my BIPOC friends who live east of 205 with a child in David Douglas School District, which is the target audience for this type of outreach, never receive any notifications about anything going on in local government. They're fairly active community members, so something as simple as a notification in all of the local community centers would probably reach thousands of underserved Portlanders like my friends. How do the organizations bidding on this contract plan to reach underserved community members who are not part of community-based organizations? Are there lessons learned from the lackluster responses to the original charter survey communities of color did to base our new efforts off of? Will Portlanders get to see the marketing plan? This large sum of money, the taxpayer dollars being spent. It was estimated, I think, that we paid them around $300,000, and they reached
I'm sorry to
1,500.
interrupt. Do you mind that's 3 minutes.
That was my last sentence. I just, we only reached about 1,500 people in that survey of $300,000. So we need to do better. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here.
Thanks.
We do have probably time for one more person to offer verbal public comment tonight. So I'm just going to wait a minute. Samantha, I see your hand. I'm going to promote you to a panelist. You can be on camera or off, and whenever you're ready, go ahead. You have 3 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you, Julia. Hello, Co-Chair Gamero Castanelli and members of the committee. My name is Samantha Gladue. I use she and they pronouns, and I am the Coalition Director of Portland United for Change. We are a group of organizations who support the charter changes and want to see them implemented well. After conversations with partners, I have a couple of requests for the committee to consider. The first is related to facilities. Please recommend to council that they move forward with the most cost-effective and efficient recommendation and plan to renovate City Hall. We are concerned about how delays to this process could interrupt the transition and impact the new government. The second is related to city administrator hiring. Please help ensure that the hiring process has a longer community engagement runway than recent processes, and consider how frontline communities and city employees will be engaged in the process. We hope the GTAC can uplift involvement of communities that are often neglected in these processes. The organizations participating in the city's diversity and civic leadership program would be an excellent sample of stakeholders for whomever is contracted to conduct the hiring process to engage with, and we recommend that the contractor conduct stakeholder interviews with them and the city's labor partners. Thank you for your consideration and your ongoing work.
Thank you so much, Samantha. And thank you to Vicky and Babs for sharing your thoughts with us tonight. As always, if you didn't give verbal public comment, you can give public comment at any time through our website or by calling 311. So thank you so much. If we can get this slide deck back up, and I'm going to turn it back to Jose to introduce our next agenda item.
Great. Slide. And I'm actually going to ask Shoshana to share her key takeaways from the September 2023 transition status update, and then we'll open it up for your feedback and questions. Shoshana gets ready.
I am sure. Bonus panelist. Yes, thank you so much. So I am happy to introduce the new and revised version of our status update. Got some great feedback about how to make it easier for you to see what's changed from last time and for us to include some additional information. So at the top, you'll see that we link to previous status updates. You should be able to find that information. You can also link to our transition plan. So if you kind of want to follow along where we are in our work. And then, of course, anything that's new will be indicated by in blue. So I think that if we step back and look, like the biggest thing that seems to be going on are the issues that are going before council at the end of this month. So we spent a lot of time last month preparing the new organizational chart, talking about community, sharing that out, and incorporating some feedback both internally and externally to develop an organizational chart that will report up to a new city administrator. The new date for the council session related to the organizational chart is November 1st. So that should be posted, I believe, October 27th on the auditor's website. And if it is available earlier, of course, share it with this group here. So that is a lot of what our work was last month. You'll see that there's some updates to the section around voter education, voter ranked choice voting administration. And most notably that Clackamas County, Multnomah County, and Washington County are developing IGA. That has since been signed, and we should be able to forward it to the GTEC if we haven't already. So that, and you'll see more about that in the October update. Yeah, okay,
Thank you.
so it has been signed, and we'll make sure you have that.
Thank you.
We've been doing a lot of work and conversation. I know that you had hosted Sofia Alvarez Castro and the team from the auditor's office last week in Democracy Rising at one of your previous meetings. So that's been a real huge kickoff for the work, the voter education work. Conversations are ongoing between our office and our team and the auditor's office about gearing up for our voter education work. So Democracy Rising is a really terrific partner. They were here for a week working with Sophia and James from the auditor's office, ensuring that we have a solid plan for developing key messages for not just our hard to reach voters, but for all voters. We'll have the same messages and strategies. So with a stronger investment for hard to reach voters. Council operations went to council. I know that a lot of you were really interested in 3.02. And so that went to council last month and passed without any concern. So that's a real important step, making sure that we're organized for when the new council is seated in January of 2020. There's an ongoing conversation about council workspaces in the downtown core. And that conversation continues this Friday. So a lot of our work last month was really preparing for those conversations around how we're going to remodel City Hall, when we're going to remodel those spaces and make council chambers available for the new council. So a lot of our work last month was really preparing for those conversations this month. We're going to talk a little bit later about the recruitment for the city administrator role. Really excited to have that conversation with you. And I think those are the biggest highlights. So as we discussed last month, a lot of our work that's reflected in our status update is really truly preparing for what you're seeing right now. So we're a couple of weeks behind. I did want to thank you for all of your community engagement work and your efforts, and let you know that we're really impressed by the uptick in your events. I wanted to share with you that we are really interested in growing our reach, and you're an important part of that process. And to encourage you in your conversations with communities to collect email addresses, or really encourage people to sign up for our status updates or for our monthly newsletter. We really have a lot of information to get out there, and our team is working really hard to produce real high quality communications. And if we're not growing our reach, then we're not reaching all the folks that we could possibly with our progress. So really appreciate all of your help and efforts to help us grow the number of folks on our email list. It still continues to be a very important tool for reaching folks. So those are our main highlights, and I appreciate that. Zach.
Thank you, Shoshana. Do you have questions or feedback, anyone?
Just an idea. So this is Zach Curl again. So in thinking about just getting people signed up for the newsletter, an idea is bringing your computer or a way of allowing people to sign up immediately while you're there if you have an internet access. That's one pretty effective option that we're doing with the IDC meetings. So
yeah, that's a great suggestion, and definitely a campaign suggestion. So I appreciate that. I've seen that before.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I haven't been here for a month. I've tried to follow up and listen in on, and read the minutes, but I continue to wonder, and I've been asking for months for some written material to pass out when I meet with people and groups. Because they don't have a projector. My neighborhood association isn't set up for projection that I'm aware of. When I'm speaking with them next month, I'm volunteering for Holiday Park. And I don't think the seniors are necessarily tech savvy to have some printed material just to lay out some of the basic rudiments, including links to how to subscribe to the updates, so that they've got a takeaway that's concrete and not virtual.
Yeah.
I think would help them, my audiences, and help me in imparting, feeling that I've left them with something concrete besides the information that I have in my head.
Well, thanks so much for that. We do have hard copies over there at the table of some material, so I'll make sure to make a packet for you of some. It is basically overviews of the different streams of work, so I'll make sure that you have a packet
Great.
before you leave tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the update on the status. I really like it. And I also think that I just wanted to give a shout out to the email. Email is the transition email, the monthly email is really well done. Lots of great information in there. So thank you. My other question is there an overall schedule of the whole transition that we can access? I feel like I know that you're putting the status in here, and I trust that you're keeping it up to date, but I just feel like I'd love to look at the schedule and see what's coming up and see how it interacts with each other. If there was a link to that, that'd be great.
Yeah, we have one that is outdated in our transition plan.
Mhm.
And so it is our effort to get that updated. Our team is participating in a retreat next Monday and Tuesday, and that will really help guide our next set of deliverables. We have been really marching towards all of these deliverables at the end of this month and the beginning of next month. And so now we have a moment where okay, when this organizational chart is adopted by council, then what are the critical path issues that we need to implement in order to be ready for 2025? We have some of those pieces outlined, the budget process and recruitment for the city administrator, but we really need to drill down a next level now that we know what the organization will look like. So stay tuned for that. We have something that is outdated, but gives you a good idea of the pieces in our transition plan, and I can send it electronically, but it will be revised before the end of the calendar year to really show what those key deliverables are between now and July 1, and then of course now and January 1 of 2025. Thanks so much for the shout out for the email. I do need to take a moment and just kind of recognize the significant contribution that is an absolute team effort. Everyone on the team contributes to it. And, you probably saw from the timestamp that it went out well after 5 last Friday. We had two of our members from our communications team working extra hard on not only the press release and the get that out. So I appreciate that it's landing well, and it really is a huge team effort.
Very good.
Amy Wood.
I wondered if there might be any other strategies for escalating the email subscribership. Because I think if we all, through our outreach, add a dozen people at a time here or there, it's going to be a pretty slow build. But perhaps if the city could use its existing social media channels and put some paid dollars behind promoting subscribing, maybe that's already being done, or just any other ways to escalate that to get more of a paid media strategy and build followership of it. Because the faster we get people on the email list, of course, the faster we begin our voter engagement and other things. So it'd be wonderful to just tap into the city's existing social media paid dollars if they could promote it.
Thank you for that. That absolutely was one of the strategies that we talked about with our comms team this week. So stay tuned on that. Let me know.
Amy R.
Yeah, also +1 to how awesome that newsletter is. I apologize if this is folded into one of the bullet points in the update, but I would love to hear updates on the media strategy to be the broken record. I know that was something that had been on our agenda and we never quite revisited it. And I know that the email strategy is part of it, but I wanted to hear updates about like the broader like media influencers and how we're interacting with the soft power media folks.
Appreciate that. That will definitely be one of the outcomes from our retreat. We have time specifically to talk about our communication strategy, and we needed to have a few more stakes in the ground before we kind of knew what this next phase of communications is. But stay tuned, and I appreciate the nudge on that.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question. Is there an assigned like PIO for transition team? Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure that there's a budget.
We actually have a terrific communications team. It includes Francisca Garcia, who does all of our web and design, Daniel McCardle Jimenez, who is our lead strategist, and Christine Labregat, who is our PIO. And so when we talk budget for next year, those are going to be positions that we're going to absolutely advocate for in the next year's budget for our transition staffing. We're really hoping to continue all of the positions that we have this fiscal year, and it's critical that we have communications resources, community engagement resources, in addition to voter education resources. And I did hear someone comment on the public comment period about resources for voter education. And we absolutely recognize that we will need an additional ask for next fiscal year. So the reason why the ask for this fiscal year for voter education was so modest was because of where the fiscal years hit with the preparations for voter education. So this year we're paying for a lot of preparation for materials. Next year we'll be asking for dollars for outreach dollars, especially for a broader voter education process. Sorry, I know I've gone over.
Yeah,
I'm getting that.
We're a little over. I am going to ask for I'm going to ask one last question because I've gotten a lot of acronyms or barrier for a lot of people in government. So can you explain really quickly what a PIO is and what they do?
Oh, sure. Public information officer, they can have a lot of roles for our team. They are the key conduit for relationships with the press. On our team, they actually cultivate relationships and seek opportunities for communication strategies to be deployed through the press, but they also respond to press questions to answer community questions or press questions when their folks are writing articles.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Next slide, please. Now I'm going to ask June to share her key takeaways from the September 2023 Community Engagement Status Update, and then we'll open it up to less feedback and questions because we took too much time before.
Hi, everyone. June Reyes, I use she, her pronouns, transition engagement coordinator. And I wanted to do something different with this engagement status update to just share my reflections and how I'm shifting in my work versus rehashing what you all have already read. But one update I wanted to point out is we did something different where we provided public comment by geography, and then there's a table below that does it by district. And as you'll see, we collect zip code data, which doesn't line up nicely with where the districts are. So any feedback on whether or not that's useful, would be helpful. We provided both just to see, hey, do you want to shift to one or the other, or just as you're looking at it, understanding what works with you. And so after reading and going through the engagement status update for September, some things that are coming up for me is, so the verbal public comment, it doesn't look like we'll probably meet our numbers if we don't do more promotion of having people provide verbal comment. And so that's a conversation Julia and I are having to see if we can help facilitate more of this. Looking at our policy discussion numbers, the Independent District Commission carried a lot of those public hearings and those policy discussion kind of meetings. And then another observation, so in regards to that, things that we're looking at now as a team are there upcoming policy decisions that are coming up? What are ways to kind of increase the opportunities for policy discussions and discourse within our community to talk about these things? The other piece is GTAC engagement. So you'll see that the number there is not as high as maybe we'd want it to be, but we were off to a slow start, and kind of putting together your scheduled or planned engagement, that number, especially this month, is a lot higher, and a lot of folks are doing a lot of presentations out there. So I've checked in with all of you on sort of what I have for your engagement, and then try to see what you might need to feel supported in that. And I think that's something we're also going to be bringing up during our November reflection. And I think the last thing is also recognizing that the hard to reach population outreach in terms of folks left out of City Hall being 50% of our engagement, we're not quite there. And so for me, starting to reach out more proactively to contacts I have in community organizations, trying to see maybe what they need to be able to participate, or line some opportunities up for us to participate in to give briefings and presentations. So I think we wanted to open it up for questions or also folks to kind of just share their general insights about engagement.
Yeah, Zach Curl. I wanted to give you feedback on the geographic distribution thing since you asked for it. I think it's generally cool, like a great idea, but like it was like 1% or 1.5% of respondents or submissions actually entered that information. And so I can see it being really misleading if it's left up there, given that that input. If anything, maybe put like a large percentage that did not answer or something like that, rather than have it distributed 100% of those who've identified their geographic representation. And then I think, I don't know if we had this conversation, and this might be my own problem, but our input into how we've been having conversations versus a presentation and policy discussion, did we ever like kind of come to an agreement of what we define that as? Because sometimes I've been in like presentations, if you will, originally thought of as a presentation. It becomes much more of like a policy discussion and request for feedback and back and forth. So I don't know if that's like my own like inputs error that's being reflected in our engagement or not, but I just wanted to flag that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that those are two good points. I think let's talk about the number, because we do put the number of commenters for the percentage, but it still feels like it's misleading. So we should check in on that part. And then I think to the piece around policy versus like a policy discussion versus meeting presentation, I think maybe that's just a correction that we can make on the form to make it clear that you can log those more specifically.
Thank you. Terry?
And just a question on the public comment report, the assembled document of all the public comments have come in. You know, I skim those, and there might be some in there that I would want to follow up with. And so I'm curious as to how that could occur. And the other thing is a lot of it, we're getting it a month late. We're getting those public comments a month late. And not helpful in some instances. And I don't know how to actually get them to us sooner and that we can engage around them. But that's my concern and a question, I guess.
I can answer that question since I read every single piece of public commentary, so thanks. This is Nicole Forbes. I use she, her pronouns. I'm one of the staff on the transition team. So it depends on how the public comment comes in. In the last survey we did around city organization, it was a completely anonymous survey. I could not respond to someone in that sense. For anyone who emails the transition team, contacts the transition team through 311, or uses our online survey, if you ask a question in our online portal and you put your email, because that is optional, I will respond to you. Folks who email the transition team get an email response back, usually with a response to the link. It's like you'll see people that is public comment that says, I would like a link to the district maps, please. I answered that one yesterday. And I do respond and I send them the link to the district maps. So if it is a comment that's coming through email, we are responding to those. If it's someone from 311, we do respond or call folks back. So you are seeing the first conversation or first contact when you are seeing those public comments. Or if I don't know the answer, I reach out to the team and have someone on the team respond to make sure that we can answer those questions for folks. So people do get a response back around that work, Terry. It's been a lot. I will say there have been a lot of emails in the last couple of weeks around the city organizational chart. And I will say that if folks are still emailing the transition team about that, we are both logging that information and forwarding those comments to city council. And so I believe it was Babs who made a comment around a climate officer. I will go back, transcribe that, and then make sure that that gets sent in with my Friday comment report to council on the feedback that we're receiving. So if someone has given their contact information, we respond to them. If there isn't a way for me to respond to someone, I'm sorry, I can't answer your question. But if you email transition@portlandoregon.gov, I will respond to your question. Or contact us at 311. Whatever way, if there's public information for folks here, we are responding to those.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Let me just follow up real quick. How do I respond? If I wanted to follow up with somebody on a comment that came in, to maybe, bring it up here at GTAC or get a GTAC resolution together around an issue. How does GTAC get to respond to these things, or do we?
I'm looking at Julia and June for like a process question on that.
I mean, Terry, what's sticking to me in your question is the timeliness factor versus you read a public comment and you ask me whether we have contact info and we connect you, right? I mean, that is very doable. I would probably reach out to the person though first and say, hey, there's a member of the Government Transition Advisory Committee that would like to respond or connect with you based on this public comment you submitted. Is it okay if I share your contact information with them? That's how I would do it normally. This other question about, is there a faster way to get GTAC all of the public comment? I think we'd have to think about as a team. If you're okay with letting us think about that and get back to you.
Thank you. We're actually out of time for this area. So Fred, can you put your question in the chat and then, or unless it's quick?
No,
It's not quick? Okay.
that's quick.
Okay.
Yeah, I just, when we first adopted a community engagement plan way back when, I remember there was room for former city officials, electeds, legislators and the like. And because I know so many of them, been reaching out to them individually, having substantive meetings with them and good feedback, getting them signed up for the newsletter. and tracking, knowing that Nicole has answered their questions via email, because I'm getting that loop, but there's no place to put that information in the current spreadsheet. So I think maybe June and I will be working on how to update it, but right now it's just groups and not individuals or, alike. And so I don't know where they fell by the wayside. I do think that they have wisdom and knowledge and background about the city and the community that I would like to, I'm learning from them, and I would like to share that knowledge with the committee and the council if they don't on their own. And I'm certainly encouraging they're doing so themselves, but just a point.
Thank you, Fred.
Thank you.
So now I'm going to turn it over to the members of the work plan work group to introduce our next item. Begin with Mani. Would you next slide, please?
Yes. This is perfect. Hi, y'all. Mani Goodable, she, her pronouns. And I had made a motion a couple meetings ago that since we got received a response from the mayor's office in regards to our letter around our scope of work, that we should make a work plan. And so we had a work group around our work plan. And tonight you're going to hear from Bill and I, and we just want to present what the work group has created. The work group consisted of Bill, Terry, Mavi, Destiny, Lori, and Zach. And what we had visioned for this document, that it'd be an iterative document. And I had suggested that it could be a tool that even the subcommittees could reference, and maybe some grounding each time we hear from the subcommittees once we start that work next month, I believe. So that's the purpose of this. It's not something that I hope doesn't just get created and gets dusty, that it's something that we can go back to and edit accordingly and update the timelines, which you'll see, or maybe you've already seen. So wanted to say that the work plan was created from a couple documents: the Chief Administrator Officer's letter dated May 4th, and the Council Mayor letter dated August 23rd, along with the Transition Engagement Plan. So before we go into discussing certain items of the work plan, do folks need 5 minutes to review the work plan that was sent to you if you didn't have time? There's no shame in this, but we want to go right into discussion. So if you haven't had time to look at it, would you raise your hand or thumbs up if you'd like 5 minutes to review the work plan? Or are you ready to just get right into discussion?
Could use 5 more minutes.
Okay.
Okay, we gotta find it.
So why don't we take 5 minutes? If that's okay with everybody.
Where's the-
If that's okay.
This is Bill, a link. Oh, Zach just posted a link.
Yeah, thank you,
Also
Zach.
in Julia's email.
Oh. Where is it? Missing. I lost it.
So we can come back at
It went away.
6:54. And then I'll just hand it off to you at that time to hear from the committee.
There we go. Here's them.
Further down.
There we go. Thank you. Mhm.
Right, Bill, can I hand it off to you?
Well, okay, thank you, Monty. If we have, if 5 minutes have passed, can we go to the next slide? Okay, this slide highlights four or five items where we'd like to focus discussion. The reasons for that are that while the sense of our work plan or work group is that these are good ideas that can enhance communication with the public and improvement by the city, they can be perceived as outside the scope of our GTAC role as expressed in the mayor's letter and in the city administrator's letter, administrative officer's letter. So we'd like to focus on these and seek your feedback on them. I just said the pro argument for them is the sense is they're good ideas. Concerns are if they're perceived as being outside our role, they create additional work for us, but then can be ignored if we submit comments, as a committee. We'd like to go through, seek your feedback on each of these. Before doing so, to get a sense for how we allocate time, as you read the plan, are there additional items that or subjects you'd like to raise? And we'll make time to raise those after we discuss these initial items. I suppose maybe if you just raise your, or wave your hand or raise your hand. Okay, you see Fred and Amy. Good. We'll leave time to address your interest and concerns. And also please raise your hand for discussions. You'll see in the work plan, all these items come under forms of advice. So under our category for employee engagement and change management, we have a proposal, an item to act as another conduit for receiving employee feedback, besides, city staff, providing an alternative to current channels to mitigate potential issues with internal review processes or employee discomfort with existing avenues. So we invite feedback on this item. Fred?
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Monty, and all for putting this together. My first concern is, and because of my absence, I may not have been party to the discussion about subcommittees and work groups. When I answered the survey on subcommittees, I just saw two. And one was voter outreach, and I volunteered for that. I didn't volunteer for the other one, so I didn't remember what it was. But I noticed going through this voluminous work plan that's going to put our noses to the grindstone for the next year that and a half, that there's a sundry number of subcommittees and work groups. And so is there a proposal or plan to create them if we undertake these various activities in sequence or as a committee as a whole? As far as section B, employee engagement, I think that that's way outside of our scope. I think that there's collective bargaining issues. There's we all know probably some city employees, but it's probably not appropriate for us to be a side venue for feedback. The administration has a plan of how to deal with work with employees, encourage them to provide input. And if they're afraid of or somehow shy in that regard, I don't know that it's appropriate for us either individually or as a group to be listening, hearing them out otherwise, because it's not going to channel well, I don't think. I like the rest of these items. They may be outside the scope, but they're very important because they go to my critical concern, and that is how the community is engaged in all of these activities, not just in the transition, but in the future administration, including budgeting. And I think that there's enough expertise on this panel, even with Mr. Farver's resignation, to provide for some advice to the administration and the council on how to enhance community involvement. There's 98 to over 100 advisory committees to the 28 different bureaus of the city. That's way too many. There needs to be, and I know that public life, community life is working on some kind of plan to provide it. If we can provide some feedback to them, more power to us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Fred. And what our work group is going to do is we're listening to everyone's comments. We will meet again and then update the plan, given your comments, and submit it at the next GTAC meeting for review and approval or possibly further revision. Jane.
Thank you so much, and a big shout out to the fabulous group that put this work plan together. So appreciate it. And the work plan itself is really quite big. And then we've got these more amorphous issues to get our head around. So I read it a while back and I thought about it, and my initial sense is not to do any of this. Because the work plan is big and concrete. Except I do love the number D, the sort of whole idea that if asked, meaning we would suggest that we might be asked to help put together a public engagement plan as the new city administrator and as the new councillors come on board, a kind of a suggested outline, particularly if I heard Shoshana correctly, say that there might be the equivalent of a public information officer that would be hired earlier. Maybe that would be some very useful work that we could do to help that team. But I think that we should suggest we have the skill set to that, and maybe wait to be asked. Thank you.
Jane, hearing your comments, it just makes me ask, on D3 and D4, if one revives the statement that say, if asked, comma, are you recommending that edit, or?
I think it's a little bit more, it's a little bit more direct than that. I think that through our team leaders of Julia and June and Nicole and the bigger body that we offer our services, I think that that's the other kind of thing that I remember loving advisory groups for, is when the advisory group came and said, let us help you on this, rather banging the table and said, you know, we need to know this. So I just think that that would be very useful, because I think it's going to be quite quite horrific as the transition really hits the ground. And it would be nice to get something in place. But that's just my 2 cents, and I thank you so much for indulging it.
We'll upgrade your comments to 2 bits.
Hey, Bill, can I add something before we get into some other comments? Just a little context setting as well that we got late this afternoon that we heard from the transition team, and for you all to just think about as you're commenting. The first 2 items they agreed were out of scope, and the last 3 items that you see on this slide, they said were in scope. So just wanted to provide a little bit more information as you're thinking through your comments.
Good. Thank you. And may I ask, are the last 2 items D3, D4, and F3?
That's right. Yep, that's
Okay.
right, Bill.
Thank you. Okay, Jane, I think, yeah, I think we've completed your question. Okay, great. So Amy, please.
Yeah, that's useful context. When I read the transition plan, or when I read this work plan, what stood out to me was the A1, conduct 2 quarterly community presentations per member with at least 1 provided to communities traditionally left out of City Hall. I think it's been like a challenge for us as a group to even reach out to those that are presently engaged with City Hall. So maybe just taking that back and like rewording that, or understanding like that, I don't know, somehow revisiting that bullet point and getting more clarity for ourselves, because reading that reminded me this explicit goal we had to reach out to kind of marginalized communities, and how maybe we as a group need to seek more support from civic life, from those institutional things that we've been saying as a group for a while, that we need to tap into the existing city relationships, because right now we're just tapping into those relationships and we don't really have capacity to go that much further beyond that. So how can we think as a group another way of doing that? Because that's not necessarily panning out.
Thank you, Amy. We're hearing that. We'll look at that wording. Juanita.
Yes, I'm fine now. Yeah, I was just thinking in terms of the advice, the recommended actions for GTAP to endorse community participation. Some of the meetings that are from feedback in the community, and also from the meeting that we had with the committee that determined the geographic areas in the city of Portland for voting. We hear comments regarding the need to develop a more formal department or office or something within the organizational structure that will consider community involvement or community engagement in a more formal manner. I know that we talk about the officer for, what was it called? Let me see, I have a note here. The PIO person that is going to be hired, that sounds to me more like somebody that is going to be dealing with the media. And but I think that the more inclusive and formal approach to do ongoing community engagement is a much needed part in the city organizational structure. I know that we are not supposed to talk about that because we're not, it's not our option to make recommendations in that area. But I have to make the comment because all of these things are so interrelated that they do, fall within each other. And if we don't do one, then the other one may not get done. So we can talk a lot about it, but if it is not formalized in an organizational structure, it won't happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Juanita. Amy, I think you have a second question or a second comment.
Yeah, sorry, just to speak to your comment, Juanita. So there's a staff of 3 that's presently the communications team. Somebody on the transition staff can speak to that, but they actually already have a whole communications plan. And one question when I met with Daniel around like their outreach was what we're deputized to do as GTAC. he was under the understanding when we spoke, so this was a month ago, so maybe this has evolved. But when we spoke, he was under the understanding that we as GTAC weren't authorized to sort of speak, except in the case of the chairs. So maybe that's something we want to formally pursue in our work plan, is that we authorize some people to be like media deputized or something like that. So we can reach those harder to reach groups via the media and via these broadcast channels, and also support their efforts, because they're extremely limited in their capacity and ability to do this kind of outreach. And they were under the impression that we weren't authorized to do this kind of outreach. So that's just what I know right now, but I can investigate further for the group.
Thank you, Amy. We've had some comments on all of these items. So we can consider these individually, or would anyone else like to make additional comments on one of these discussion items? Yes, Lori?
Sorry, I thought you were going to say make additional comments in general.
Oh, okay. Well, we can.
Too quick.
Okay, Lori, if you hold on one moment there, Juliet might have. Nope, she doesn't. Okay, these are additional comments.
Mine would be general too.
Okay.
Can I just, sorry, Bill, can I just add too, for other members of the working group, if they want to provide any feedback or what they saw in this process, for a little bit more context setting, as well as we move on to the general response to it, invite others on the working group to provide that insight if they'd like. But if not, we can totally go to Lori and Juliet.
I'd prefer to defer.
No, that's fine. Yeah, and all I was Terry, I'm gonna butcher what you said, I'm sure, but Terry I know this is a longer document, and hopefully you're able to kind of digest it section by section. So I guess the only context setting that I would want to add to the conversation that we're already having is, Terry, you said something around that we could think of this work plan in two different ways of engagement and advice, I think. Terry, correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, you're nodding your head. Yay, I remembered. So I really liked that, and that stuck with me. I know it seems like very detailed, and it's coming from these three documents that I was had said earlier, and want it to be, when I made this motion, again, my intention with it is that it's this roadmap that helps us stay focused, because we can kind of spiral into other things, or the political climate goes another way, and we get pulled into that. Sometimes it might be the right thing to get pulled into, and sometimes it's not. So I just want to offer that as we kind of go into getting general feedback. And Shoshana's still here, that if you have questions for kind of the transition team perspective and how they responded to the slide that you're looking at, Shoshana said she would be available to answer some questions there. Sorry, Bill, I keep hijacking.
No, that's good. Thank you. Thank you for the input and comment. Okay, I'll start from the top, at least on my screen. So, let's see. Well, I think, Lori, we were going to call on you, so we're open to additional comments.
Great. I just wanted to say that I thought that, and I had a very, very small part because I was traveling, so saying my name wasn't really valid. I wanted to say a great job to the team, because I thought you did a really nice job of capturing, when you read the letters that we've gotten and the feedback on what our role should be. I thought we were really thorough. And to that end, I think what Jane was saying, I think this shows our plate is really full. And I hope that we will use this document to look at what's in scope and what's out of scope, so that when things come in, we make conscious decisions about, are we going to take this on? And if so, what are we taking off our plate? Because we have a big ask, and I think we have to be really careful about bringing things in. To that end, I think it would be important for us to put a couple bullets together on how we will use this document. Something like what I just said. Also, perhaps looking at it, I don't know, quarterly, assessing how we're doing against it. Are we kept to it? Are we on track? Are we missing things, et cetera? Maybe the co-chairs are using it for setting agendas. So something like that, a documentation. And then my last question is, will we be sharing this with someone? Like, should we be sending this to city council or to the mayor's office and saying, we heard you and this is what our work plan is, or at least have a link to it on our website, or, you know, where else is a good place for us to share this information so people know this is what we're signed up for. And by the way, this is what we're not, or anything that's not on here, we have not signed up for. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Lori. Juliet?
So I guess I have 3 points, and some of it is kind of in response to Lori's comments. But my concern in another conversation, and this continues now, is that we also think about how much work we are adding to staff. Yeah, and I mean, it's not just a resource and a fiscal sense of fiscal responsibility. It's also just respect for them, and you know, look how much they're already doing, and we don't want our committee to just become bloated, I guess, for lack of a better word. So that's one thing. I like your idea about sharing, because I know there are people who really like to get into the weeds in this kind of thing. And so let's make it available to them when we're comfortable disseminating it. And I mean, in my neighborhood, I know people who would just like to geek out on this stuff. And then I'm not sure really where this fits, but on the last page, it talks about lessons learned. And I was so struck by what Nicole was saying about that she responds to emails, because I write emails to the city periodically. I even have written a couple since this committee started, and I don't even get an email was received, your email was received confirmation, not you. It was kind of before you even started receiving email. It was to different offices. And I've actually been kind of asking the same question of different sources. But but I don't know that anyone even received it, much less read it, much less responded to it. So if we could, that is such a leap forward from my experience with the city, that I love this idea of lessons learned, and that would be the first one I'd want to capture. So if that makes sense.
Can I ask a follow-up question? And I'm sorry, Juliet.
No, I'm done.
If you just said this, that I had a question. I know as a part of this workshop, I have a question, not to jump the line, but around the deliverables. So do you all as a committee see that we're going to do that collaboratively, and it will not be on city staff to do that? Or who is the executor of that last section is the question I have.
Measuring section?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Where you could see learn lessons and kind of impact. And so nothing that needs to be answered now, and hearing what you've said, Juliet, made me think of that.
Good questions. Terry?
I was just trying to decide whether to lower my hand or not. Too late. A couple things that I would just want to say, and one is, as complicated and lengthy as this document seems, it really isn't. And I think it's for the reason that we only have two functions, as Moni was explaining on my behalf. One is giving advice, and the other is doing engagement. That's all we do. And the advice stuff can be sequenced, so it can be spread out over time. So as it comes up, supposedly we would be giving timely advice when the time comes. And the engagement is in the engagement plan, and that is also sequenced. So it's not like, it isn't that extensive, for one. Then the other thing is that we have subcommittees that haven't met yet. And they may have ideas about both engagement and advice that they might want to include in this plan or take out of this plan. So some of this stuff is placeholder stuff. And we should be willing to amend it freely when those subcommittees get going. And then finally, I just take issue with the scope problem again, because I look at C2 as being directly related to how district representation is going to go, because there's this assumption out there that the elected council members in these districts will be doing stuff in concert with the district coalitions, and all the neighborhoods want to know about how all of this is going to work when we go on our engagement runs. So I'd want to push back on that one a little bit as whether that's in our scope or not. That's it.
Thank you, Terry. And I am conscious in terms of allotted time, we'll run out of time, and we started a little late, but we probably got about 3-4 minutes to go. So Juanita, I'll call and allow you.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I forgot to put my hand down. I'm
sorry.
Oh,
we were all eager. We're still eager.
Let me take it down. Sorry.
Okay. Well, Fred. Okay,
thank you. I'll try to be brief. I want us all to keep in mind that the new counselors, all 12 of them, are going to want to be the conduits for constituent outreach and communication and community relations. How they relate to each other in their own districts, or how the different 4 districts relate, counselors amongst themselves as a body of the whole or in subcommittees, it's really going to be up to them. I want us, I think, to be able to advise them. We're extant through March or April of 2025. So we're going to see who gets elected. We're going to see what they know about the city government, or about the new city government, and what their views are on community engagement and relationship with the current neighborhood associations or coalitions that are reinstigated around the new districts. I think we need to be humble in that regard, that they're the ones that are going to be running the policy of this city come January 2025. And so we need to step back a little bit. I don't think we should be advising how these district offices should be set up or anything. I think that the staff is working on that. They're looking at DEI issues and overall the process of how to engage the community. I think we also need to be aware, as should all candidates for these council positions, that under a mayor or a manager council form of government, the elected council members do not work directly with the staff other than through the manager and the conduits that the manager, the administrator, or the mayor has made available to them, so that there's a good sense of responsiveness and transparency through that process, not through individual council members.
Fred, thank you. Okay, to close our session, Zach.
Thank you. This is Zach Curl. I guess, Fred, to your point, I respectfully disagree that our future council is going to make the decisions about their engagement, because our current council is actively making decisions about how structures will work. And I feel like I recognize that it is potentially out of scope, but in a public engagement platform that we're supposed to be providing for the city, it is relevant to being a conduit or being able to provide the recommendations to city council from a platform of representing the public. And I realize that that's my own personal opinion, but that's what I
Is
think.
that C2? Are you talking about?
Yeah,
C2?
that's
Okay,
C2.
thank you. Yeah. I thought you were. Thank you. Okay.
Concur.
Well, thank you, Fred. Thank you, Zach. And I think these are good discussion. Our work group will get back together, absorb these comments, and work to make this strat plan even better. So I think, unless my colleagues on the work group disagree, Jose, please, the agenda is back with you.
Thank you. Thank you to the work plan work group for all the work you've done, and I look forward to seeing these edits and feedback being made into a draft for approval. Now we have, next slide, please. Now we'll have Shoshana again, Shoshana Oppenheim with the transition team, and Tracy Warren with the Bureau of Human Resources to present on the city administrator recruitment approach.
Thank you so much for having us back. I'm here with my colleague, Tracy Warren, Deputy Director of the Bureau of Human Resources. So I'm just here to provide a little bit of context to remind you that the city administrator position is appointed by the mayor that will be elected in 2024 and confirmed by a majority of the council, also elected in 2024. This is a critical component of the new form of government that separates both the executive and the legislative functions at the city of Portland. So the city administrator is essential to assisting the executive mayor to manage the city's services and the day-to-day operations. So there was broad community support for a professional, non-elected city administrator. And that was captured by the Charter Commission and put before voters, as you know, in ballot measure 26228. A city administrator is distinguished from a city manager in that a city manager is usually found in a council manager form of government. So there's some distinguishing factors about those two forms of government. I know you guys talked about it a lot, but I just wanted to kind of lay that groundwork that that's kind of how we come into this conversation about the city administrator. With that, I will pass it to Tracy to talk about our plans for recruiting for this very important position.
So I just want to take a minute to say hello, and it's nice to be here tonight with everyone. I appreciate being invited to have a conversation about the recruitment for the city administrator role. I'm actually very excited about it. It's a first for us, and it's creating a lot of synergy and opportunity for us to look at things a little bit differently. So I want to go over to the next slide. There we go. So there's three key components that we have worked towards with the city administrator recruitment. One of them is establishing a partnership. So I want to spend a little bit of time this evening talking about what we did to establish a partnership with an executive recruiting firm to help support us in our recruiting efforts. So we did go through a formal RFP process where we went out and asked for interested parties to submit a formal proposal of their interest. We received 9 formal proposals. We had a group of 5 evaluators from different backgrounds and different parts within the city, including a community member who joined that process. Of that process, we narrowed it and selected one firm to represent us in this process. It is a local firm. That firm is called Modus Recruiting and Staffing. They were not able to be here this evening, but they have offered to attend a future meeting if you would like to meet them directly, so that they could give a little brief introduction about their firm and the process that they typically engage in their supporting organizations. The next piece that I wanted to talk to you about is engagement with the community, city employees, and stakeholders. So you kind of have a little bit of an overview before I jump to another slide where we'll talk about timeline and your specific roles in that process. So over the next year, we'll be working to engage the community, city employees, and any other stakeholders that are identified through our process of meeting with different folks to understand the needs of the administrator role and who needs to be involved in that process. We'll send out a survey to ask questions and gather feedback on the ideal candidate profile. We'll hold information sessions to walk people through the survey and how they can provide input and answer any questions that they may have about the recruiting process. And then we will put together a report on that information gathered and the engagement that we went through to gather that information. We'll use that information to develop a draft ideal candidate profile and recruitment plan. And then what we'll do is we'll kind of take a pause and wait for the new mayor-elect to join the city of Portland, to which point we will ask for their input. So I think the last piece, the recruit and select, ultimately the mayor will appoint the city administrator. So our goal is to work ahead and provide the incoming mayor with a recruitment plan that can be easily enacted, that is supported by the community, our city employees, and other stakeholders that are identified. So next slide is the timeline. So you'll notice at the bottom of the slide, there's a GTAC interaction item 1 and 2. This is where we see you all being engaged in the process. This won't be the only time that you're able to be engaged in the process, but these will be some key points in the process where you will be involved out the gate. So the first is in early 2024, when we launch the survey about the ideal candidate profile and recruitment plan. We'd like to be able to work with you all to review a draft, provide input ahead of time before we send that out. The second part is spring of 2024, where we will share the survey results and engagement report. We'd like to provide that information at this group first before communicating out to a broader audience. In June of 2024, we'll establish the ideal candidate profile and recruitment plan. That will be in draft form. And then in January of 2025, we'll work with the new mayor to draft a job announcement. So what we'll do is we'll take the draft ideal candidate profile, we'll take the draft recruitment plan, and we will present that information to the mayor, along with what support we can provide to the mayor in recruiting and seeking out talent for the role. In February through March of 2025, we'll advertise the job and we'll begin the selection process. In April through May of 2025, a candidate will be selected, an offer will be accepted, and a public announcement will be made. And then in June of 2025, the Portland's first city administrator starts work. That's the goal. I know I've just downloaded a whole bunch of stuff. Any questions that I can help you answer?
Yeah. Brett does. Let's see, raise hand.
Let's start with Amy Wood.
I'm curious if there's any concern about the short timeline that we kind of have to work with the job recruitment and an announcement not starting until the new mayor has started, means that we have such a race to get somebody on board. And when you combine that with the likelihood that we might recruit somebody from out of the city or out of the state. What is there any sort of conversation happening around, well, what if the perfect candidate that we're recruiting comes in, into our recruitment process in March? How do we get them, will we be able to recruit somebody and move them to Portland in time? I know that's kind of like a multi-part question, but has that been coming up at all? Like how logistically we would potentially recruit the best candidate who may not be in Portland, given that timeline?
Absolutely. I think that was one of the key reasons why we sought out an executive recruiting firm to help us with the process, is because the goal is for them to begin thinking about what we need now. And as we develop the ideal candidate profile and draft, and we have the recruitment plan, for them to start reaching out and seeking out potential talent and talking about the city of Portland and getting them excited about our opportunity, so that when it is open, we can then escort them through the process so that they can be competitive and ideally be one of the folks that are selected. I think you raised such an important question, Amy. And I think we also have to recognize that the community of people that are interested in this job are already paying attention. They are already watching our every move about how this transition is being managed, how the politics on the ground. So folks are already paying attention and already thinking about this position as a possibility for their next position. So just so you know, it's not news to the community of people that are qualified city administrators and city managers in other cities locally all over. So just so you're aware of that everything that we are doing is kind of reflects on this recruitment, this very important and critical recruitment. And so we have to always be putting our best foot forward in this transition so that we're able to attract that highest quality candidates for this position.
Juliet?
So I've heard the term interim come up in a few meetings and conversations. And my understanding is that at least under some models, hiring an interim is the best practice. So, but maybe it doesn't apply to this model. I can't imagine putting ourselves through that. And I think that's why a lot of towns who should do it, skip it. But can you address that point?
I think I'll turn that to Shoshana, because she's been more involved in some of the conversations around potential for an interim. Sure. So the mayor has developed an approach and shared that with his colleagues on council that would include appointing an interim early in 2024. And he outlined a plan that would have that person starting in July of 2024. So in order for that to happen, council would have to pass an ordinance that would be outlining the roles and responsibilities of that person during this interim period of time. So it is definitely a consideration. It is definitely in the interest of our mayor to have what he is calling a turnkey solution for our new form of government. So an opportunity for the new form of government to be operating and us to, test it out a little bit and work out the kinks before that new city administrator is in there. But also to remember that the charter amendments did not leave us without an opportunity to have a city administrator, in the opportunity that the position is vacant. It is the mayor that serves as the city administrator. That is in the charter. So we would not be without a city administrator. Yeah. We would have an elected mayor who is serving in that capacity. That mayor may choose to delegate those authorities to another individual during some period of time. So there are opportunities for an interim to be serving. And I think that that was the strategy of the Charter Commission when they outlined those provisions within the charter.
Money?
Can you tell us more about the firm that you hired and their experience with possibly searching for a city administrator in other jurisdictions?
Absolutely. I can give you a little bit of information. And I did bring along our recruitment and workforce training manager, Christopher Parr, in the back. So if there's things that he can fill in that I leave out, I'll just jump in there, Christopher. So the Modus Recruiting is a local firm. However, they do operate out of Oregon, Washington, and I believe Idaho. They currently have a large contract with the state of Oregon, to just kind of give you an example of the type of executive recruiting they've done. And they are working with the governor to appoint many of the directors over all of the state agencies currently. So that is one thing that they've done. They have also worked with us, the city of Portland, in the past to recruit for some of our more difficult positions. An example of that is our chief planner.
MER?
Yeah, I had the same question of what happens between January and June. I think that's answered by the interim stuff.
I'm sorry, Tracy, could you spell the name of the recruiting firm? It's a question from community in the Q&A.
Yes, it's MOTUS.
Thank you.
Gary?
Okay, so here's my worry, is that nothing in the charter would prevent the mayor arriving in January 25th, January 25, and appointing somebody, let's say me, as to be the city administrator. And if I got the votes on the council to approve that, that's that. I'd be the city administrator. So I guess that's a question. Am I correct at that? But the second part of it is, I see that we're establishing an ideal candidate profile and recruitment plan, but I'm worried most about the profile. Like, what if that profile is not what the mayor wants? Are you setting up the mayor for whatever, for failure by establishing a profile before he's in office, he or she's in office, and that person has to respond to this ideal profile that he had no participation in? How does this plan preserve the prerogative of the new mayor to appoint whoever they want? That's the question.
I think Shoshana sits over here. She's ready to answer that.
Sure. Terry, I understand your concerns, and I think that's one of the reasons why we're having this conversation early. It's so that we are kind of laying the groundwork. All candidates will know what work we are doing. All candidates could actually have an opportunity to influence the work just like any other community member. And so having this open dialogue about what our recruitment plans and our intentions are. But I think that one of the things that we also have for us is we have a very detailed list of specifications and tasks outlined in the chart. And we have the opportunity to receive community engagement on those efforts. And it is the community that can hold us accountable to an equitable and fair process that is to avoid some of the issues that you are outlining. Of course, if a mayor comes in and has support from council members on a candidate, that is also an opportunity. But I think that we are publicizing our intentions. We are being transparent about the need for this process, and we are engaging the community early as a counterweight to any of those activities that you're identifying. Is it a surefire bet that it'll happen the way that Tracy and I and the community are expecting? No, but I think we're laying the groundwork for a transparent and engaged process.
Fred?
Thank you. My concern has been for some time, this bridge fiscal year budget process and getting the reorg up so that these 5 service areas can become erstwhile departments or divisions of the centralized administration as of July 1, 2024, so that it's up and running more or less by January 2025 when the new administrator, new mayor comes in. And I think that Julia, thank you for sharing the letter. And I noticed people not in the room, on the chat, she shared the mayor's letter to the council about that transition September 26th and the need for an interim administrator. And I wholeheartedly agree with his approach. And it's critical that it happen. I don't know that it needs to happen next month, but it certainly needs, we need to work, the city and the council need to work together to make it viable through this next budget coherent form of government under an administrator, mayor administrator regimen effective January 2025. I like your point 4 in that the mayor, and this is to Terry's concern, I think, the mayor is going to draft the job announcement. She is going to be the one recruiting for her new administrator. And so I think that she will have had some say in who gets hired and will be able to work with that person. So I'm not uncomfortable with that approach whatsoever. I think it's really commend getting up and running because there's a lot it isn't just by January 2025, there's so much more in future opportunities and getting these bureaus that have been siloed for so long to actually talk to each other and work together. We got to start sooner than later. Thank you.
I think that's all the questions. So now we can go back to Shauna to do more about the proposed approach before the city administration is on board. I think questions have been asked about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I outlined, both what's in the charter and the mayor's intention. I know that he would be happy to know that he has your support, Fred, and the support of others. I think that it is a political discussion. It is a power sharing discussion. And so that is, we are providing the framework and the information necessary for the decision makers to make a decision how to move forward. So that'll be an ongoing discussion. Happy to entertain any additional questions on that.
If no one has any, there is a question that maybe is on some folks' mind in the Q&A.
Julia, can you speak up a bit?
Yes, I'm going to just read a question that's in the Q&A.
Okay.
Are the deputy city administrators hired before or after the city administrator?
Again, that's a political question. If we were operating in the new form of government, the city administrator has the authority to hire and fire and manage the day-to-day operations of their deputy city administrators. What's going before council on the 1st is an organizational structure that reports up to a city administrator. So it is a question for council if they want to accelerate that work prior to the hiring of a city administrator.
There are more questions. Zach, you had a question.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, I put my hand down.
No, I was just going to follow up a clarifying question. So just to make sure I'm understanding the answer to the community member's question. Essentially, the hiring of deputy city administrators is essentially going to be at it before city council within this budget cycle. And so given the,
Exactly what I'm sorry.
oh, okay.
That's
I don't think, I apologize if that's what I said. Do you want to finish your question?
Well, because they would be having the opportunity to potentially budget those positions given the new organizational chart, and therefore potentially authorize the hiring prior to a city administrator coming in. And in a conventional way, city administrator then has the opportunity to hire, fire, and remove. But there's a potential of having deputy city administrators in place day one because of the budget. Is that true?
The budget action to fund the city administrator and the deputy city administrator positions will be in the budget for 24-25,
Right.
which will be before council in May.
Right.
So
Right.
if they authorize funding for 24-25, they consider it in May and pass it in June before the end of the fiscal year. So that would allow for funding for those positions. If council decides to accelerate any action in this fiscal year,
Oh, yeah. I was thinking more of next fiscal year, but before January 2025.
yeah, so that is a question for council to decide. They will decide when the funds are available for those positions, and they will also decide if they are going to appoint interim deputy city administrators into different.
Well, or can I ask for some clarification on that, Shoshana? Oh, that they would not be making the decision, the mayor would be making the decision, is that correct? Were they to agree in next May to adopt a budget that allowed for early or an accelerated transition so that there's something, there's some intact governmental structure before January 2025 with these 5 service areas purportedly, or, that's recommended, the separate departments, there'd be deputy administrators for them potentially if the council agrees on that budget approach, but they would be forfeiting, I understand, probably their control over the 28 different bureaus that are assigned to them in order for them that they now hire and fire bureau directors under their purview. And so that may be what I think Zach's getting at. I know that the new mayor, or the new administrator come January 2025, no doubt these deputy administrators are going to be at-will employees. So there's an opportunity to revise the panel of deputy administrators. But so I agree it's political.
Just to be clear, I think that you are describing one scenario,
Mm-hmm.
and that scenario would require an ordinance to be passed by our current city council to establish those roles and authorities to be distributed differently than they are currently established in our charter. So our current city council would adopt an ordinance establishing those interim positions and the process and the authorities of appointing those positions and the authorities of those positions. So it requires a few steps to get to where Fred is describing. So what I will say is I expect that the city council will come to an agreement about the organizational structure, and they will pass a resolution to implement some organizational structure. And they will pass a budget in 24-25 that funds those positions. and they will direct the city to fill those positions in some way. We don't have all of those pieces outlined yet, but those are the steps that would need to happen for interim city administrators, a city administrator and deputy city administrators to be appointed.
We're almost,
Maybe take
yeah,
Terry.
we're almost out of time, so I'm going to take Terry's question. If anyone else has any more questions, please put them in the chat so we can get them answered for you. Terry, go ahead.
Yeah, this one's popped into my head, and I'm sort of interested in the contractual arrangement between the city and the city administrator. Is this work going to take a look at what that contract looks like and how it's structured and guardrails on it, that sort of thing? Or is that left to either the mayor to decide, or is that left to the council to do an ordinance, or is that left to just the attorneys to draft it up?
I can take a stab at this.
And just,
but
well, and let me just be really blunt about what I'm getting at. City administrators hardly ever retire on the job. They're usually fired, and will come with a clause in their contract to see whether they get paid a parachute or not. And I'm interested in who drafts that and who frames it, and do we get input into that?
Tracy can talk about what we currently do in terms of contracting with these high-level executives. But to your first point, Terry, I appreciate you not taking it easy on me. I've always come up with the tough questions. The city administrator is appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the council. There is also in the charter provisions on how a city administrator can be removed from their duties. I believe it is that they serve at the pleasure of the mayor or the supermajority of the council. And so there are those ways that the city administrator can be just relieved of their duties. And then Tracy can talk to our contractual provision.
Yeah, thank you. So currently, we do have employment contracts with our bureau directors. Those are typically for 3 years, and they do offer a severance if their contract is terminated earlier than the terms listed in the contract. And so, if that was to be adopted for the city administrator role, we would be looking to our city attorney to provide advice on how that would be put together. And then ultimately we'd be looking it's also under the charter how we are able to do that. So, I think we recognize that it is, a critical role, and there's a certain level of risk that comes with taking that role. And we realize that also currently with our bureau directors, and that's why we offer an employment agreement. I think we would be recommending something similar.
Thank you so much.
This has been a great conversation. Thanks so much.
Great.
The questions that you have are the questions that the public has. So thank you so much for helping us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Next slide, please. And the next slide, please. Perfect. As always, like I mentioned, any questions not answered will receive answers in writing and be posted online. So please, if you do have a question, put it in the chat or just email me or Leah, and we'll make sure your questions get answered. The recording of this meeting will be posted on the committee's website and is available after the meeting ends on the Office of Management and Finance YouTube channel. We wanted to note that the City Council has a series of work sessions scheduled this month about the transition. I highly recommend you watch and go back and watch the ones you haven't. Sessions are currently scheduled for October 20th, 23rd, October 31st. Our next full committee meeting is Wednesday, November 1st. First.
Okay. Yeah, not
Yeah.
15.
Oh, yep, first. Error on the side. Next slide, please.
Question, you've got the October 31st there, and I heard an earlier discussion that it's now November 1st.
There's
There's a work session.
On the 31st, and the city organization will be taking place on the 1st.
It's a
They're two separate.
Oh, okay, so
November
It was a
1st.
Council session, not a work session.
Okay.
Let's just be careful talking at the same time. It's really hard. I think it's actually hard being in person. It's really hard. I've been at home once too, and I remember. So I'm just going to repeat for folks maybe who didn't hear that. So there are 3 council work sessions scheduled. There are the dates on here: October 20th, October 23rd, and October 31st. Those are work sessions. So they're less formal than a regular council session, and there isn't public comment taken. And then council is currently scheduled to consider and vote on the resolution on the city org chart on November 1st, which would be a time that allows for public comment. Sorry.
Thank you, Julia. Next slide, please.
Julia, is at 2 p.m. Those work sessions?
Oh,
Oh.
no, I don't. The work session times vary. They're on the council clerk website.
Right.
At our next meeting, we plan on approving the work plan, discussing transition engagement moving forward, reviewing upcoming code revisions calendar, and reviewing the transition expenses to date. If you haven't already, please take a few minutes to complete the subcommittee survey at Julia emailed so staff can schedule the subcommittee meetings. All of our scheduled meetings are on the transition website. I see Bill has a question. Bill?
Thank you, Jose. I thought a previous slide said our next GTAC meeting was November 15. And yet on my calendar in here, I do see November 1. So I'm just confirming we are going to meet November 1.
November 1st. That was an error.
Great. Thanks.
Problem. Next slide, please.
Oh dear.
I want to thank everyone for being here today.